Hey, my name is Jesus Castillo, and in this video you are going to learn how to become professional Ruby developer. What skills do you need to become a professional Ruby developer? That's exactly the question I want to answer in this video. So right here I have a mind map, and it's almost empty right now. The center we have Ruby developer. So this is your goal, right? You want to become a professional Ruby developer so you can get paid for your work as a full-time developer, become a creative person, and turn things from your imagination, your mind, into reality, into code. And you are able to decide how the code is designed, how the code works, right? You have some impact or a lot of impact on how things work. So to achieve this, a lot of people ask, what skills do I need? What skills do I need to develop if I want to get hired or if I want to work as a professional Ruby developer? So what we are going to be doing in this video, I'm going to be filling in this mind map with the topics, and then we're going to explain a bit about these topics. Why are the specific topic important, and what's the big picture here of everything that you need to master and study to become a good Ruby developer. Okay, so let's get started right away. The main topic numero uno, main topic number one is, of course, technical skills. There is no surprise here, right? And we're going to dig deeper into what technical skills you need. But technical skills are things like the programming language, the framework you're going to use, right? The techniques that support your project development. Things like control version systems, that's Git, SVN, things like that, GitHub. All of these things are inside technical skills, and of course they are very important because without the technical skills you can't do your job, you can't get things done, right? But there are another category of skills that's also important, and a lot of people don't get, especially if you take some course or something online. They tend to focus on technical skills, but you also have to keep in mind these other skills. So what is this other group of skills? Main topic number two. So let's talk about personal skills. Okay, so this is also called sometimes soft skills, okay, or non-technical skills. You can use whatever term you prefer, but I think this is the easiest way to differentiate them. It's technical skills, personal skills. So what are technical skills and why are they important? Well, technical skills are things like, personal skills are things like confidence, communication, self-reliance, and we're going to go deeper into those as we go along in this video. So now that we got this overview, we have, so you want to become a Ruby developer, not any Ruby developer, but a really good professional Ruby developer that gets paid for his work and is happy with his results. Then you need to develop these two groups of skills. So the technical skills, let's talk about those. First, of course, for a Ruby developer, it's going to be, not floating topic, it's going to be Ruby itself, right? That makes sense because Ruby is the programming language that you're going to be specializing in, and it's different than Ruby on Rails. So we have Ruby and Ruby on Rails. So Ruby is the programming language, and Ruby on Rails, which is of course another technical skill you need to develop and learn. So these two are different. So Ruby on Rails is the framework that allows you to create web applications. Okay, and Ruby itself is the programming language. It's important to understand this difference because Ruby is just a language, it has different uses, right? It's like the underpinnings that makes everything work in terms of Ruby on Rails. Ruby on Rails is built on top of Ruby. So if you are not sure that you understand this difference, when would you use Ruby on Rails, when would you use only Ruby? Well, I have an article on my site that's called What is Ruby on Rails? And that will help you understand this difference more clearly with examples. Now, inside Ruby, what do you need to understand in a big picture kind of view? Well, the first thing is syntax. Okay, so syntax is really important for you to know, because what is syntax? Well, syntax are the rules of the language. The rules of the language. So in English, we have some grammatical rules, right? We have some rules of how you have to use words, in what order, and things like that. We have certain rules, and other languages have rules, while programming languages also have rules. And that's the syntax. The group of rules of the language makes the syntax. And it's very important that you understand the syntax and teach you things. How do you create a loop? How do you create a new class? What's the syntax? What do you have to type to create a class? What do you have to type to create a method, right? What's the correct order? What are the keywords that you have to use? All of that is the syntax, okay? And it's very important that you know the syntax and you don't have to be constantly looking it up, because the syntax is the basis of the language. So if you still at a phase where you're learning Ruby and you have to be looking up, how do I write an if statement? How do I write a loop? Well, that's fine, you're learning, but start trying to remember that. Maybe make some notes of the things you don't remember. Make some notes. Oh yes, this is the syntax for a method. This is the syntax for an if statement. That's how you write it. That's the rules of the language. That's the part that you need to memorize, but once you know that, then you won't have to check again. And you can do this, not that hard, right? Besides the syntax, what else do you need to know about Ruby to become a good Ruby developer, an effective Ruby developer? Well, you need to know OOP. What's that? Well, that's Object-Oriented Programming. OOP stands for Object-Oriented Programming. So in here, we have what we call the programming paradigm. So this is how we think about how we design the code. And specifically, I'm talking about classes and objects. You have to understand what's a class, what's an object, how is a class different from an object, and why do we have classes and objects? Why do they exist? What's their purpose, right? How do you create an object? How do you create a class? How do you create a method? How are methods and classes related. How are different classes related? How different classes and objects can work together? All of these things are what we call object-oriented programming. And if you don't know how that works or what a class is, you should be able to describe what a class is if I ask you. So if in an interview I ask you what is a class in Ruby, you should be able to give me a reasonable description. Something like a class is like a blueprint from which we create objects. That will be a short, reasonable description. Of course, you can be more detailed about all of the things you can put into a class and give concrete examples of a class and things like that. But that will be the overall, the short description of it. So object-oriented programming, important if you want to be a good Ruby developer. And the next subtopic is methods. Methods. So what do I mean by methods? Well, the methods are also part of object-oriented programming, but in this case, I'm referring specifically to built-in methods. So for example, if you have a string, right, you might want to do things with that string. Like for example, you might want to know how many characters you have in the string, or you might want to break down the string into an array of characters. All of these things are done with methods. So for example, for the size, you say string.size. So the string object itself, then .size, right? So let me open, just to make it super clear to you what I'm talking about. So this is a string, right? That's the method. So when I say built-in methods, I mean the methods that are given to you by the language. There are also other methods. For example, how do you access an array? So if you have 3 elements, how do you get the first element? That's also a method. Or how do you add new elements into this array? Let's say this array is called A. We want to add 4. Well, that's how you do it. So this kind of things is what you need to know. Okay? That's built-in method. And I believe that the more methods that you know, the better code and more effective code you're going to be able to write. So that's important. And how do you learn about methods? Well, there are many ways to do it. One way is to read code. You read code that other people have written, and there you will find new methods. Another technique you can use is to read the Ruby documentation. In there you can find the different methods that exist. And then in my Ruby book, when you are past the syntax and the very basics of object-oriented programming, then you might enjoy my Ruby book, which is called Ruby Deep Dive. And in there, I show you more techniques to learn about methods. And specifically, I also show you what I think are some of the most important methods that every Ruby developer needs to know, including methods like map, inject, select, any. Okay, there are many methods like that. So that's Ruby. That's what you need to know for Ruby. Now for Ruby on Rails, the web application level. So in the web application, we have 2 parts. We have a front end, and this is the design, basically the design of your website. And this covers things like CSS, HTML, JavaScript. Okay, all of that goes into this bucket, to this group of front-end design. And then you have the back end. right? So the backend, what is it? Well, it's access to the database, it's the logic, calculations, all of these things go into the backend. And all of these things to do with Ruby itself. The front end, you're going to be using some Ruby in the form of ERB, which is the embedded Ruby template. But mostly you're going to be using CSS and HTML to format your design. So understanding the difference between front end, back end, and what goes into each, that's important. And then also you need to understand MVC. What's that? Well, MVC stands for Model View Controller. Okay, so it's 3 components: model, view, controller. Every component has a specific role that it accomplishes, and in general, what MVC is an architecture. So this is how you organize and design your code inside a Ruby on Rails application. Okay, so the model is related to the database and database operations. The view is related to the front end, and the controller is more related to the back end. Okay, so you need to really understand how these pieces work, and also how they work individually, but also how they work together. Okay, so that's the main thing for Ruby on Rails, understanding these pieces and how they work together. And then after that, it's not only Ruby, you also have to understand other things outside of Ruby that help you develop your project. So for example, one of these things is TDD. Well, what's that? It's test driven development. Okay, so this is a technique for testing your code. What's testing? Well, testing, and specifically automated testing, because there is manual testing and automated testing, right? Manual testing is you are testing yourself, right? You're going through the program, through the application, or testing the features manually, checking yourself that this is working, this is not working, whatever, right? And then automated testing is you write code that tests the code, right? That's what it is. And if you read any of the job offers, they list, as most of them, like 90% of them, if not more, they list testing, knowing how to test, how to write this automated test as a requirement to get the job, to get hired. Okay? And specifically in the world of Ruby, what most people want is one framework, one testing tool called Aspect. Okay, so there is another that's also pretty good, it's called Minitest, but most people that are hiring Ruby developers, they are looking for Aspect. Okay, so you need to learn this, and I have an introduction to testing with Aspect if you're interested in this topic. It might seem like that's this a lot, and we still have some to go. So don't worry if it's a bit overwhelming. It's okay. You can figure this out, right? The reason people get paid well for being a developer is not only that they can code, but because they can manage all of these skills, right? So don't worry, just take these skills one at a time and keep the big picture in mind, right? And know that you are making progress and that you will figure things out. with time and effort. That's what it takes. And you can do this. Anyone can do this if you put the time. Next, what's the next technical skill? Well, I think command line proficiency, command line skills are important. What do I mean by that? Well, you see, I open this little window. We call this the command line or the terminal, the shell. It has it goes by different names. So the command line is important as a developer because as a user, as a user of your computer, just click buttons, right? And you click on links, and you click on images, you click on things, right? As a regular user of your computer, but as a developer, you need more power than that. And you get that with the command line, with the terminal. And why? Because you can combine the commands and things like that. For example, you can ls, which means listing. You can list all of the files, and then you can filter the files by some criteria. For example, we can find that files that has certain content, like maybe you're looking for files that have a specific method in them, a specific method name in them, or a specific string in them. And you can do that by using the command line. Also, editors, modern editors, have powerful search features, but it's just an example, okay? Also, things like Rails itself is a command, okay? Changing Ruby versions, right? If you're using RVM, or you're using, like me, I'm using CH Ruby, or you're using some other kind of Ruby version manager, so you can have multiple versions of Ruby, then you're going to be using the command line, right? To run your test, you're going to be using the command line. So if you're using rspec, you're going to be saying rspec and then some file, right? That will run your test. Or you want to run some file, some Ruby file, you also need the command line, right? And for creating a new Rails project, you're also going to be using the command line. So I hope I made my point. It's important to understand the command line and be familiar with it. Just understand some basic commands like cd for change directory, ls for listing files, grep for filtering, things like that. Then Rails, Ruby, RVM. Just get familiar with these kinds of command and with working with the terminal, okay? That's an important skill to develop as a Ruby developer. And finally, on the technical skills is Git. So Git is a version control system. A version control system. What does that mean? Well, a version control system is very important because it allows you to keep a history of changes of your project. A history of changes of your project. You can see when a specific change was made and what date, who made that change, specifically what files were changed. So you keep this log of changes and you can see the progress of your project over time. So let me show you an example of that. If I go to my courses project, I can do git log, and you can see some of my most recent changes. And you can see author, the date, a short description of the change, and then you can also dig deeper and look at what files were changed, what code was added or removed, right? So that can be very useful. And also you can recover code if you want. So this gives you the freedom to delete code that's no longer needed. So you don't accumulate all code, because you will be able to reference it later if you need to, using the version control system. So every professional Ruby developer should be using some kind of version control system like Git, which is the most popular right now. And this also allows you to share your projects using a site like GitHub. So that's also why this is a valuable skill to develop. And it allows you to collaborate with other developers through pull requests and things like that. So that's the technical skills. Now let's take a look at personal skills. And don't just dismiss the personal skills, because these are also important. If you only have technical skills, then you won't be able to communicate with other people and be able to be helpful to them, even if you have the best technical skills, because you won't be able to understand what they want or what they need or what you need to do to make progress. So the personal skills, let's start with what I think is the most important, especially for junior developers. So if you're a junior developer, or if you're new, completely new developer, this is very important. And the skill is called self-reliance. Self-reliance. What is self-reliance? Well, self-reliance is the ability to figure things out by yourself. So you don't have to be constantly asking questions. You don't have to be constantly asking other people for help, right? You are able to solve problems by yourself and figure things out. This also means that you know how to use your resources. And by that I mean Google. You know how to Google for error messages. You know how to use the Ruby documentation, the Rails documentation, aspect documentation, Git documentation, right? In the documentation you find all of the descriptions for the different methods, the different things that are possible to do with all of these tools. Okay, so it's important to be able to do these things, to be able to know how to do research on your own, how to do read documentation, and how to find information and solve problems. And in fact, that's the next skill very closely related to this, is problem solving. So problem solving is closely related to self-reliance, because problem solving means that you know how to solve problems mostly on your own. Okay, this doesn't mean you never ask for help, so you don't have to go all the way to the other side and be, oh, I never asked for help. No, if you get stuck after trying, then you can ask for help, but it should not be your first resort, right? So problem solving, you need to develop like a system or a process for solving problems and for finding answers to your questions. And when you run into an error, you need to know how to read the error message, how to interpret the error message, how to debug your code, how to find out why your code is not working, right? All of that is problem solving. And again, it works together with self-reliance, because if you are self-reliant, you will be able to do the research necessary to solve the problem if you don't already have the knowledge that you need to solve it, right? So problem solving, you need to develop this process for fixing problems when they come up and for finding solutions. So these two skills are important because that's the first thing that people are going to look for when they're going to hire a developer, especially, like I said, a junior developer. Because maybe as a junior developer, you know a little bit about this, a little bit about this, a little bit about this, but you don't know everything that's necessary to be very effective with all of these technical skills. That's okay, because you don't need to have a lot of experience with technical skills. You need to know have a foundation of them and be able to have a base. But if you are self-reliant and you know how to solve problems, then you will be able to figure out the things that you don't know, and therefore you're going to be growing and learning as you develop your programs. Okay, so if you are able to demonstrate this self-reliance and that you can solve problems, you're going to increase your chances of landing a Ruby job as a Ruby developer, of getting hired as a Ruby developer. Okay, and if you don't develop these skills, and of course also the technical skills, then you are going to decrease your chances. So the last personal skill that I'm going to cover, kind of already hinted at it, is called confidence. So confidence does not mean arrogant. It doesn't mean that you think that you know everything. In fact, that's the worst thing. You always need to be open to learning new things, right? You don't close yourself. Oh, I already developed some technical skills. Okay. And then, no, there's always more to learn. Okay. But what confidence means in this context is that you are able to recognize what effort you put in and what you have learned. So, in other words, you're able to recognize your progress and you're able to be confident about the progress that you have made. So you spent 6 months learning Ruby and you completed exercises and you did review, then you should be confident about that, right? But also when someone asks you if you know something and you don't know that, you also are confident about saying, no, I don't know that, but I know how to solve problems. I'm also self-reliant. I know how to find the solutions, how to do the research, how to create my own solutions. I can rely on my skills to figure things out. And you can confidently say that if you develop these skills. Okay? So as you can see, all of these things work together. And as a result, what you get is a professional Ruby developer. Okay? So for these personal skills, as an overall skill, I will also add something like communication. So communication also goes along with everything here. And one tip I have for you about communication is this. First, seek to understand the other person, then to be understood. First, seek to understand the other person, then seek to be understood yourself. So that quote is from a book that I recommend if you want to work on your personal skills. That's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Okay, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There are other books as well that you can find on the topic of personal skills, communication skills, and personal development, and problem solving and self-reliance. Okay, so that's it. That's the mind map, the overview, the big picture of the skills that you need as a Ruby developer. So what you need to do is to develop a plan. How are you going to work on these skills? What are you going to do to develop these skills, to acquire and master these skills? It's not only about memorizing, it's about actually developing skills. And also remember this from Brian Tracy, a personal development teacher. He says that, and I also believe this, all skills are learnable. All skills are learnable. Okay, so you just need to know what skills you have to learn, and then the only question is how can you learn that? Okay, and then put in the work to learn these skills. And then you will figure it out and achieve your goals. So that's it. That's I have for you today. Hope you found it really helpful. Please click the like button for me so I know that you like this video. And if you want to keep learning, watch more of my videos now, where I cover these technical skills like Ruby. Also we cover some Ruby on Rails, some TDD, some command line. I might even do some Git eventually. And watch these videos because it's going to help. I also will try to put in some of these personal skills to help you with that, mixing with the videos. Also, you want to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos as I release them. And you also want to visit my website rubyguides.com. rubyguides.com. In there you will find many Ruby tutorials to help you improve your Ruby skills. Thanks all for watching. I will see you in the next video.